But I think
We're talking about ethnic cleansing. It's a very mealy mouth type of apologetic.
I know, so before we come...
I won't interrupt you. Go ahead, sorry.
Thank you. Actually, being far more reasonable than I expected to be. Thank you. I'd like to start trying to see as much common ground as can be got and as many positives. It's easy to start off with emotive and potentially even accurate terms like ethnic cleansing. I'm not discarding that possibility. But in the interest of trying to find common ground, what I see foundationally is whatever bad decisions were made around 45, 48, a bunch of people got born in this land, Israeli and Palestinian, who didn't choose to get born there. It's not their fault. I think people are responsible for their choices. None of these people are responsible for being born into that situation. All of them have inherited bad baggage from a history that other people built for them. And there should hopefully be a constructive way. There must always be an optimum way out of any situation. And I would hope that the optimum for all of those people, if you empathise with them, is potentially better than something as drastic as I think you just proposed, but maybe I'm misquoting. So when I said, what do you think the way forward is, your answer was what?
For the stolen land that has been taken to be returned to its rightful owners.
Would you go, what, pre-67 borders, or just the whole thing?
Yeah, the whole thing. So do you agree that it's stolen land?
I think it's so complicated. I genuinely do.
How can it be complicated? I asked you what the Nakba is. I asked you if it's ethnic cleansing. Your response is only that it's complicated. No, that's not a real response. That shows kind of moral cowardice, because you're not acknowledging the reality.
It could show a moral cowardice, or it could show that sometimes situations are genuinely complex, and I think they're made
Well,
worse.
I didn't ask you for a solution. I just want us to come to the same terms as to the reality, the history.
Okay, can I give you some...
Is it stolen land?
I'm not sure I'm qualified to say so, but I've got a strong suspicion that chunks of it are, yes. Is that fair?
How much of the chunks are stolen?
I don't know, but so your opening question was that, and I think I'm ceding that I think you have a point on the part of the Palestinians. Can I try and say what I think might be some positive things first, see if you disagree?
Please, go ahead.
Okay, number one. I'm a big fan of Daniel Schmattenberger. Daniel Schmattenberger says, when asked the question, what's one thing everybody could do to improve the world? He goes, take a small amount of time and really try and look at it from the other person's position. Learn to phrase their argument as well as they would, and try and empathise with how it feels to be there. Okay? I think that's good universal advice. I think at worst, if you do that 10 minutes a day, you've wasted 10 minutes, and at best, you may improve the situation. So that's one thing everybody could do. Okay?
I agree.
To represent where I personally am at, with my limited understanding of this, if I'd been in the ground on Saturday the 7th, I don't know what I would do, because I've never been in that situation. But I think what I should do is try and defend the settlers, and I wouldn't try to stand by them. I hope I behave that. Well, now, hang on, let me balance. Equally, right now, if there are innocent Palestinians who are at the receiving end of that retaliation, I hope I would stand on the ground to protect them.
Well, why do you define?
Is that reasonable? So I'm trying to side with the innocent people as individuals, more than put people into big tribal groups and then make blanket statements. That's why I think it's complicated.
I'm not trying to put people in tribal groups. I'm just talking about very clear moral terms that I think you, as a reasonable person, will agree to. Okay. That you can't define the settlers as neutral parties. They have settled illegally according to international law, even according, if you want to say, yeah, Israel is legitimate within the 1967 borders. Even if I conceded that, the settlers have gone way beyond those borders, and they've been condemned by international law. Israel doesn't care about international law. Those settlers are basically pushing Palestinians literally out of their homes at gunpoint, and so they're not neutral. So when you describe October 7th, you shouldn't describe it as an unprovoked attack.
I'm not.
You should
I'm not suggesting.
Fine, not you, Tony, okay. But others. The media, they want to present it as if Palestinians are just bloodthirsty and they have this terroristic attack against innocent settlers. These are not innocent settlers. They are literally stealing the land of Palestinians at gunpoint, subjecting Palestinians to all kinds of apartheid, ethnic cleansing, and things that all moral people of conscience, such as yourself, would agree is absolutely wrong. And that's what I want to get your agreement on, so we have a shared basis to discuss, other political matters. But if you can't agree that this is unconscionable, immoral, unjust, barbaric, ethnic cleansing, if we can't agree to those terms, then it's difficult to have a further conversation.
If I could respond to everything you said apart from ethnic cleansing, because I think ethnic cleansing is so emotive. In terms of justice, there's always an optimum ideal. An ethical ideal, I think the way the Palestinians have been treated falls significantly short of that ethical ideal. Yeah? I think
Palestinians have fallen? How? How have they fallen short?
Sorry, I didn't say that. I said the way they've been treated.
Oh, sorry, okay.
I believe that's the case.
I misheard.
I could be completely wrong, because you've got to study your facts. I may not know enough facts. There are other people here who will correct me on my assumptions. But I'm a layman, I'm trying to do the best I can, okay? I think, okay, here's something hopefully we can agree on. Upholding international law with uniformity for all people at all times is an aspiration that we could all aspire to, yeah? So
As long as the international laws are just.
Okay, well, just international, but whatever the international laws are, at least they should be arbitrated and executed with uniformity for all people, irrespective of nation or faith. Is that reasonable?
Fair enough.
Okay, so from that positive point coming in, I'd say we're all collectively guilty to some extent, everybody, of not implementing that successfully, and hopefully we can see that if we had implemented it, it might have diffused some of the tension. Because I believe...
How did Palestinians violate international law?
I think the specific Hamas people who just walked in and killed over 1,000 people, as far as I'm concerned, they acted...
They're fighting in a war of self-defense. Palestinians are defending themselves. And so, of course, there's going to be deaths, just like in any war. When you occupy a people's land and you're ethnically cleansing them, then how are you supposed to survive? You have to defend yourself. Gaza is an open-air prison. Palestinian children are being literally starved to death. And when they're not being starved to death, they're being bombed. How many hospitals has the IDF bombed?
I get it.
Right?
What I made...
No, if you get it, then you should acknowledge that Palestinians are not the ones who are violating international law and all standards of justice and morality. It's one side that's violating all standards of justice and morality. You should acknowledge that. Don't just retreat and say, oh, it's complicated. I think you're better than that, Tony. I think you can acknowledge that this is a clear-cut violation by one side and not the other. One side is the victim of a brutal occupation, a brutal system of ethnic cleansing. You see that, you know that, I know that you do. So just acknowledge it. You don't have to play both sides.
The fact that I'm not framing it the way you are, I think breaking things down into black and white, yes and no, good and bad, can be to oversimplify a problem. You want to get the idea. Okay.
Show me who's bad. Show me how the Palestinians are bad.
Okay, I'll say a couple of things which is against Israeli supporters, just I think to keep common ground, so hopefully we can get constructive. Because I'm surprised we got this far. Actually, I really am. Okay.
I'm not surprised. You look like a reasonable man.
Thank you. Unfortunately, as I've been transparent, everything I've seen about you gave me the impression that you were totally unreasonable. So I'm pleasantly surprised we're talking.
And also, who's responsible
Fair
for
enough.
implementing international law? Because you made it sound like we're all responsible.
Yeah, this is what I was
But
going to
I
say.
don't think we are, because
Okay, I think
isn't it not the Security Council's
Let me lob in
responsibility?
this idea. I think we've broken this thing that we divided into people who are innocent and people who are guilty. And I think that black and white thing is not helping. We should be asking the question, on a scale of complicity, how guilty is any individual? And I think every individual should look in the mirror. This isn't limited to people in Palestine and Israel. The entire global community is in some way failed to implement international law with equanimity, and we could all have done better. Yeah? Can we agree on that?
Can you, for example, condemn the Nazis for the Holocaust, or is it morally complicated? Why is that? Yes, of course, it's black and white when it comes to them, but when it comes to Palestinians, then it's complicated, it's gray, we can't make a moral judgment.
I'm not saying that, because what I haven't... It's a matter of proportionality, okay? It's a matter of... You're pointing out who's been substandard, even if, and I think you're right on balance, that the Palestinians have had a bad deal, okay? I think that.
I'm saying more than that.
Nonetheless, the key question, the ethical question is, what is a proportional response?
By who?
Now, I've heard some commentators, like Piers Morgan, I'm not a big fan, but he's plugged this question again and again and goes, what is a proportional response? So that's what we need to identify.
For who to do a proportionate response? But I'm trying to clarify what you mean by
proportional to everybody, because as far as I'm concerned, I want to be on the side of everybody. The species is my tribe. I'm not in any given group. And I think reality happens at the level of the individual. And the more you think in tribal mass terms, the easier it is to depersonalize it and lose track of the individual reality of pain and suffering, yeah?
Okay.
So you want to focus on that, and in reality that is happening to individual Israelis and individual Palestinians, and I want to empathize with them as much as I can, without just making out it's all 50-50 in the same, and ignoring the moral and political quandaries you're pointing out, okay?
Is there any such thing as an innocent German in World War II? Were there any innocent Germans?
No, I don't think...
There were no innocent Germans? We're just caught up?
As I hope I just said, I don't think any human being is 100%. We're implicated and connected with each other. Everybody is culpable of being suboptimal.
So the Jews were culpable for the Holocaust? If everyone is culpable,
I don't want to be the guy who's going...
You have a certain standard for World War II?
I don't believe that. Okay, all I'm saying is we all make choices. We make some substandard choices, and terrible choices are made by the Nazis, no question. Okay, they are the most culpable people. You could argue.
So can we compare the actions of the Third Reich to the IDF and what the Israelis are doing to the Palestinians, starving them to death, bombing them, ethnically cleansing them, stealing their land, bulldozing them, literally running over them with tractors? We can't compare that to genocides?
I think you can make, if you want to make a comparison, I'll go on an edge and go there, but I think in terms of scale, I do think there is a clear difference. Well, there is...
Yeah, I can agree. I can agree that the scale could be different, but are they within the same category of genocide?
If you want to argue they are, hypothetically, let's accept that they might be in the same scale. Now, if we measure the severity, 6 million people in concentration camps with clear intent and gas is not a level of is a much higher level of malicious intent, I think, than confining people into an area and ignoring international law and potentially
starving them.
Now the starvation, that hasn't been the ongoing policy prior to that, I don't think.
It has.
You said
95% of Gazans in Gaza don't have access to clean drinking water. They don't have access to medical supplies. The few hospitals that they have been turned into rubble. That's the reality of Gazans.
The figure that I've heard, correct me if I'm wrong, I've heard this from Abbas. Do you know Abbas?
No.
Okay, he's a Muslim. It's very good.
Yes,
very good intel. I think most people here respect Abbas to a fair extent. I've heard quoted is that between 2008 and 2020, 5,000 just over 5,000 Palestinians were killed in the conflict, and about 250 Israelis, which means you've got a ratio of 20 to 1. Yeah, I think that's a significant statistic, and it should be on the table. Okay?
It's not. It's even more.
I don't want to hide from that, but I would then draw on it and go, okay, I'm looking at 5,000 versus 6 million. I think you can see there's a quantitative difference there. Also,
that doesn't take into account the total amount of deaths by Palestinians who are malnourished. They don't have access to medical care. They cannot go to access medical care, even in the West Bank, because there are checkpoints that prohibit Palestinians from traveling. This is why former President Jimmy Carter calls it an apartheid state.
Sure.
It is an apartheid state that was worse than what South Africa experienced.
I get it, but we were able to disentangle.
So what is the human toll of that? It's not just about civilians that are killed in armed conflict.
Okay, I'm not agreeing with the severity of your diagnosis, okay? I do agree that ethically, I think the Palestinians have had the short straw. That does not mean for 1 minute that I support what Hamas did, and as I've said, on that day, I'd be on the ground helping to defend those people, okay? Because
helping to defend Palestinians?
Helping to no.
Why?
Why?
You're
Because
saying you're this close to acknowledging that the Palestinians are being ethnically cleansed, but you still want to defend the ethnic cleansers?
Okay, no.
The settlers? That's what the settlers are doing.
I haven't reached the point where I'm agreeing with the level of ethnic cleansing which is comparable to the Holocaust. Number two,
you just agree with a little bit of ethnic cleansing.
No, I think
not 6 million. Maybe a little bit lower number of ethnic cleansing is okay.
Okay.
That's how you sound, my friend Tony. I
sorry.
just met you. I really like you, but this is how you sound. It sounds ridiculous.
Okay, I don't want to sound like that because it's not right, man. Let's go from foundational assumptions. Nia, intent in the Quran. I'm all about intent. Okay, I think it's always intent, and I could be wrong, but I think the level of malicious intent that was intrinsic in the Holocaust was significantly, and I mean significantly greater than the level of malicious intent which has been happening with Palestine. That doesn't mean there hasn't been malicious intent. That doesn't mean there hasn't been injustice. That doesn't mean that international law hasn't been flaunted, etc. But I can still engage with a little of empathy, which I think the Quran as well would prescribe, attempting to empathize with the individuals on the ground who are unnecessarily being taken down and suffering and dying when it's avoidable and we could do better. And I think we're all obliged to aim for the best solution possible.
Now, there's a difference between a Palestinian whose land has been stolen, whose entire family has been wiped out, the rest of his family has been turned into refugees, and he's facing the death bombing of this terrorist state. There's a difference between that innocent Palestinian and an Israeli who is on that occupied land, is benefiting from the land of the Palestinians, and is living comfortably, and then has to face some kind of war situation. That's a war zone that has been created by Israel. It's been created by Israel, and it's been maintained by these Western powers like the US and the UN Security Council that have maintained this oppressive occupation. So you cannot make an equivalence between innocent Palestinians and those who are literally occupiers.
Okay, again,
Would you agree with that?
I didn't dispute the way you're drawing the moral lines. What I'm disputing is the proportionality of your response. And
what response? What is the response?
The fact that you seem that we should always aspire to.
Are you talking about 40 decapitated babies?
No.
That was proven to be a hoax?
Okay, I don't know that's proven.
How about the raped ravers that turned out to be a hoax?
I don't know that's a hoax.
What about all of these hoaxes that have been pushed by Israeli propaganda? How about the AI images from Ben Shapiro of the charred babies? It turned out to be a hoax, fake images.
Okay, apparently.
These are all hoaxes. Like, what is the grave moral crime that the Palestinians have committed? They've just defended themselves.
Can I respond?
Yes, please.
I thought when Mohammed Hijab debated Piers Morgan, to me the most interesting thing that I heard during that debate was when Piers Morgan fleetingly said, "Do you believe in a two-state solution?" And Mohammed Hijab said, I'm paraphrasing, "I'm not sure, it's complicated." And then the debate moved on. And that to me was the sweet spot for a deeper conversation, okay? Because Mohammed Hijab is normally a fairly adamant individual. And when I heard him concede that point, I thought, here's the terrain we should be opening up in terms of a discussion. I think being not sure is often quite wise. I'm not sure about the beheaded babies, okay? I genuinely don't know. It could be either way. I'm not sure about the hospital. It could be either way. I'm not sure about a number of things. What concerns me is people who are sure, above and beyond what is objectively reasonable. And the fact that you sound like you're so sure makes me maybe appeal to you to double check your sides. Maybe the level of
can you at least
you're bringing to this.
Can you at least condemn Israel for bombing hospitals?
Well, yeah, of course. Hang on. Because it's about near and intent. Anybody who bombs a hospital and innocent people with intent, I clearly condemn. And by the same token, because I believe in the principle of self-consistency, I will also condemn people who I think disproportionately, Saturday the 7th was disproportionate. What was done to those people was disproportionate.
What was done to the people?
They were murdered.
Why? They're armed settlers.
There weren't causes.
How do you know that? How you said that we're unsure about this thing and that thing. Why don't you admit that you're unsure who was actually killed? How do you know that they weren't actually IDF soldiers?
Okay, you know what? In the interest of consistency, you're correct. I don't. Okay.
Then what's disproportionate about attacking these apartheid stormtroopers?
Can you not now steel man the position? Because I'm uncertain, I've now got to make a judgment as where do I think I should let the benefit of the doubt lie. So because I'm unsure if they were all IDF psychopaths, I think ethically I should give the benefit of the doubt to the notion that they probably weren't. Particularly the 2- and 3-year-old kids. What do you think? Yeah.
Where's the evidence that 2- or 3-year-old kids were deliberately targeted?
I didn't say deliberately targeted, but consequentially, and I'm not a consequentialist, I'm a deontologist, but consequentially it does seem that there are dead kids. And I don't think they were active malicious members of the IDF.
I mean, why can't you blame the settlers for bringing their children into a war zone, literally kicking Palestinians out of their homes and putting their children in the cribs of Palestinians? Can you condemn that?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
But hang on, if that's true, because I'm not sure I know my facts, but In terms of context, you want to be doing a couple of things. Yeah, point the finger and blame, because that's necessary. You've got to judge people on their choices. But at the same time, you should also be trying to empathize and look at the steel man position, okay? And when I don't hear people doing that, when they sound like they're certain about something, when they just want to point the finger, and when they don't want to try and empathize with the opposing position, I think psychologically and spiritually they could do ethically a bit better, and everybody should be doing it. Now, with respect, this is way the most empathic I've ever seen. I'm genuinely impressed, because I've spent quite a few hours now watching you on YouTube videos, like Matt Dillahunty.
I was very empathetic to Matt Dillahunty.
Okay.
When he started accusing me of being a pedophile, what did I say?
Without going there, I would never have thought in a million years I could stand and have a conversation with you that would get to this point.
Okay.
And that fills me with some hope that maybe something I've said might impact with you a tiny bit, and we can find more common ground. But I'd like to hear that you can empathise at least with the 2-year-olds and 3-year-old kids who died.
Yeah, of course. I empathize with any 2 or 3-year-old that is dragged by his or her Israeli parents to settle the stolen land of Palestinians. That 2 and 3-year-old doesn't deserve to be abused by Zionists, of course. It's a crime. It's a crime that Israel is perpetrating, that the Zionist settlers are perpetrating. Absolutely. The thing is that you're framing it as two innocent sides, and let's empathize with both.
I framed it as everybody on the planet Earth is culpable to some degree.
I'm not culpable of ethnic cleansing, and neither are you, Tony.
No, we are culpable of we could have done better by the state of Israel and Palestine collectively as an international community if we had enforced international law more diligently with more ubiquity.
No, we could have done better. We could have done better by not creating an Israeli state on someone else's land, and ethnically cleansing the people who are from that land, who are living on that land. That's how we could have done better. Why do you draw the line at 1967? Go back to 1945. We could have done better, right?
I do. If I went back to
okay, we agree.
No, we don't.
That was how we started. How we started the conversation. You asked me, how do we solve this situation in the Middle East? I said that the Zionist state needs to give back its stolen land. And now you agree with me that if we go back to 1945, the international community could have done better by not stealing that land. We're agreed, Tony.
Definitely. I can imagine. Marshall said to Truman, if you put the state of Israel here, 50 years from now, trouble. Okay? I believe that's the case.
Sorry, I didn't hear.
Marshall said to Truman.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think. I'm saying a lot of things here, incidentally. My partner is Jewish, I should point out, okay? So she's already, okay, I'm going to get a lot of flack. So I'm trying this is on camera. So I'm trying to seed a lot of points to you in the hope that I can bring you back.
You're a brave man, Tony.
Thank you.
You're a brave man.
On the question of proportionality, because my argument doesn't pivot on technically who was legally right or wrong or morally right or wrong. It pivots on proportionality. Once you're killing people, not just 2 and 3-year-old kids, I would argue, you're losing proportionality. You could do better. If I went back, so personally now, apologies to my partner, if I went back to 45, 48, and I was there then, I may well have looked at it rather differently. Okay?
Thank you.
Okay.
That's it.
At the beginning of this conversation, play the tape, I anchored it in the fact that I care about the living, not the dead. Those decisions,
so do I.
Right, those decisions made by people who are dead. Okay? Everybody in that part of the world has, through no choice or fault of their own, been born into those worlds. During the course of this conversation,
but we need to acknowledge the wrongs that have taken place. Is it not the
case?
We
have to do our best to proportionately address them in a collective fashion, which is to everybody's advantage. Yeah? That
sure.
Should be the
we can have a debate about how to address it, but I think that we've reached a lot of common ground on the moral illegitimacy of the Zionist state that was created in 1945.
I think
you have acknowledged that was wrong. It could have been handled better. People should not have been made into refugees and ethnically cleansed off of their land in order to create the Zionist state of Israel. We agreed on that, Tony.
No. Don't please.
We are. You acknowledge
that. That's a moderately accurate representation of reality. I'm a guy of limited knowledge or understanding, okay? I'll meet some people afterwards.
I disagree. I think you understand very well. You just don't want to say what's obvious to everyone.
No, what's obvious is there's fact, okay. There's the fact value and there's the fact